Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, May 15th, 2025. And today is May 15th. That means the Eastern Pacific hurricane season begins today, as you can see by the thumbnail card that I have here. And as such, let's start off by taking a look at the National Hurricane Center now that we're in the Eastern Pacific season. The National Hurricane Center is now going to be issuing daily tropical weather outlooks for the Eastern Pacific. And just to really quickly take a look at, nothing is expected within the next 7 days. So starting off quiet, and then you could scroll down and you see they have their kind of, paragraph about today begins the Eastern Pacific season. They have a list of all the names that they're going to be using this year for the Pacific, and a bunch of other information that you need to know. But the Eastern Pacific season begins today. We have that. But especially as of recently, over the last several years too, that also means the Atlantic is also getting daily tropical weather outlooks now, starting on May 15th. So we have that. And luckily for us in the Atlantic too, nothing is happening over the week, or at least over the next week. But the Atlantic, though, in terms of hurricane season, doesn't begin till June 1st. So we still have a little bit of time left for that. Let's take a look at, though, what's going on right now. Obviously, the National Hurricane Center is not monitoring anything. And as you can see why by a satellite look of the Eastern Pacific, there is really not much in the way of activity at all. You have the ITCZ in here that stretches all the way from Central America into the tropical Eastern Pacific, and then you kind of have a bunch of these cirrus clouds to the northwest here. That's indicative of strong shear, although I think maybe the shear might be lower, closer towards Central America. But bottom line is that there's nothing that is of interest yet. We're starting off quiet. And also same in the Atlantic too, since we're now starting to do outlooks for both basins. You could also see in the Atlantic not much of anything going on at all. In fact, you could see also very strong upper level winds cutting across the MDR, and as well a lot of this dust associated with the SAL coming off of Africa, and that's a very common thing this early on in the year. Bottom line, nothing is going on. Makes sense because it's only May, and we typically don't have much to talk about at this time of year. And another way you can look at that is by taking a look at the 850 millibar vorticity map. This is a map that I'm going to be using a lot this season because it really shows you kind of what is going on underneath the clouds, shows you the structure and the health of the system, instead of, just looking at a satellite and determining whether or not a system is actually developing and healthy. And you can see also with the 850 millibar vorticity, a little bit of energy here closer to Central America. The map kind of cuts off a little bit, but obviously nothing bundling. Usually when you want to, if you're looking at 850 millibar vorticity, and we'll talk about this a lot more, and you'll see an example for sure as we go on throughout the season. Usually if you're looking for something to develop, you want it to be more round, uniform, and you definitely want strong vorticity colors. Usually you would see towards the end of the scale, especially in well-developed systems represented on the map, like kind of like we have up here with this sort of system over the Midwest. And we're actually going to talk about what's going on here a little bit later on. But we don't have that across the tropics. There's nothing bundling. So once again, nothing to really talk about from the vorticity perspective, and same thing in the Atlantic. A little bit of vorticity over Central America, and we're going to have to watch this over the next several weeks because obviously since we're in the early season, we tend to get these Central American gyre patterns that can set up, and that could cause development in the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic. And now that we're now into the Pacific hurricane season, it is that time of year to start watching, and there might be some hints that we might need to watch, and I'll show you those hints in just a little bit. But right now, nothing bundling and nothing getting going in either the Atlantic or the Pacific. And I'll show you on the GFS model out towards the next week. We could take a look at the GFS too, the the global models to see what's going on, and just really quickly to kind of take it out over the next week. Do we see anything developing at least near term in the Pacific? This is also, by the way, the 850 millibar vorticity. And you don't see any sort of thing that is really bundling and getting going in the Pacific. So nothing for this foreseeable future for them. And also to kind of rewind in the Atlantic too, nothing really going on as well for the next 7 days in the Atlantic. So nice and quiet for now to start off the hurricane season. So let's talk about factors to be paying attention to for this year, not just over what we're going to be talking about over the next several weeks in terms of actual development, but generally, what should we expect this season? And it's really going to come down to, at least if you're from an Atlantic perspective, it's going to come down to obviously how warm the MDR is out here, which you can see is definitely on the warmer side. And I've been mentioning, and a lot of people have been mentioning over the past several weeks, definitely has warmed up a bit since the beginning of the month. And of course, and this probably has a lot more influence specifically on the Eastern Pacific season, what goes on with El Nino and La Nina. And to sum it up, if you've been paying attention to all the global climate models, doesn't look like we're going to have either this year. And it's also very interesting as well that we have a lot of these blues off the southwest coast of the United States and near the Baja Peninsula. So not only do we have no El Nino or La Nina, but we also have a kind of colder tropical and subtropical Pacific too, versus a warmer Atlantic, and that's definitely going to have an influence on the hurricane season this year in both basins. And to kind of get a setup or kind of get an idea of what we could be expecting in both basins, here is a forecast from the Mexican Weather Service or some sort of meteorological agency that was put out of Mexico that has a forecast for this year for both the Atlantic and the Pacific. And as you can see in the Atlantic side, they expect 13 to 17 named storms, so that's a slightly above normal season. And they expect, kind of interesting the way they lay out the hurricane totals, but from what I could see, they have, I would guess, 6 to 8 hurricanes and 3 to 4 majors for the Atlantic, and then here are the list of names. Oh, that's convenient. I was thinking of bringing up a separate graphic of all the list of names for the Atlantic and the Pacific, so you can kind of, we could kind of go over it. But they actually have it right here, so that's very convenient. And the first name, of course, in the Atlantic will be Andrea. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, 16 to 20 name storms. So that's actually, a somewhat active season. A little bit surprised given the colder look that we have in the Pacific. But I guess, once again, the fact that we have an ENSO neutral, maybe there's not anything overwhelming that could suppress the Pacific. Or, of course, we don't have La Nina 2 this year. Although, we'll see. That also kind of hints at maybe not anything significantly suppressing the Atlantic either. So a generally active forecast for both basins. So a nice sum up of what we could be expecting for both basins this year. And let's see how this plays out. Will be definitely interesting to track this season. And, just to kind of get an idea of at least what to be expecting over the next several weeks, as I mentioned, we looked at the tropical weather bulletin. Not much is really on the radar right now. And, once again, looking at the models. So everything is slow right now. But if you look at climatology, at least or this time of year, at least for the middle 10 days of May, looking at the climatology points, this goes all the way back to 1949 for the Pacific, actually, but all the way back to 1851 for the Atlantic. And you can see sometimes we do occasionally have stuff that develops in the Atlantic. There's also a few points here in the Pacific too, but there's not a lot, obviously, because we're just getting into the start of the Pacific hurricane season. And by the way, that only encompasses half of this period here from May 11th to May 20th, obviously, because the Pacific hurricane season begins today on the 15th. But the bottom line is nothing much that we really should expect now within the first few days of the season. And that's, of course, what we have right now. So we're kind of in line, I guess you could say, with climatology. And then obviously, as we get towards the end of the month, things slowly begin to ramp up. You can see we start filling in a little bit more of these points here in the Pacific. And usually by the end of May, we typically get our first storm in the Pacific, sometimes two. And then obviously we also have a little bit more of these points here in the Atlantic. Really wonder why they have not started the Atlantic hurricane season, or they've extended it up to May 15th as well, because they are now starting to do the tropical weather outlooks on May 15th too, daily, just like the Pacific. But they've not, for some reason, decided to extend the Atlantic hurricane season up till May 15th as well. Maybe there's just not enough May activity for them to really care to do that. I don't know. Because if you look at the climatology, there's definitely the precedence for Atlantic activity. This is the last 10 days of May. So we'll see. Maybe we might actually get something this year. But we generally start off quiet, and then we generally ramp up as we head a little bit towards the end of this month and then into next month. And typically as we get towards the start of next month, definitely we have something in the Pacific by then. And also we start seeing hints of development usually occur in the Atlantic too, namely around the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. And if you saw me on Twitter yesterday, I think I posted this yesterday, I did kind of hint a little bit at potentially maybe actually needing to watch the Western Hemisphere in general, so the Eastern Pacific and maybe obviously closer to Central America, for things starting to get favorable as we head towards the end of this month, heading into early next month. We'll see, though, obviously, if it does materialize into anything. But for now, pretty much the sum up of this entire video, Pacific hurricane season begins today, and nothing going on right now. Really quickly, though, before I end, I want to bring up severe weather, because we have an abundance of that today, especially across the Midwest. As you can see, this is the day one outlook by the Storm Prediction Center, and we have an enhanced risk. And not only that, too, the tornado risk, pretty significant. We have that hatched area, and also up to a 10% chance as well, which, in the general probability forecasting of tornadoes, 10% is not insignificant. It may seem low, like, oh, it's only 10%. There's a whole 90% chance that I won't get a tornado. It's actually higher than you think. So definitely watch out today if you're in the Midwest. There's also a significant wind and hail threat. So all three threats today are at elevated levels. But it gets spicier tomorrow. We have a moderate risk in effect, and it's been a while, I think, since we've had a moderate risk. I think not since last month or so. And when we did have it, it busted. But whatever. We have a moderate risk for tomorrow, and this is for the Mid-South, including portions of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky. And we also have, once again, that 10% risk that is hatched, and the wind up to a 45% chance. So we're looking at potentially not just tornadoes, but very strong winds, and also the hatched area where we might potentially get some of these storms to produce gusts of up to 65 knots or greater. So that's hurricane force gusts within some of these thunderstorms. That definitely doesn't sound fun. And then the hail risk as well, which is also maximized. So severe weather looking active. Be aware of that if you're in the risk area today. And definitely keep an eye to the skies. With that being said, not much else to go over. Obviously, the Pacific hurricane season is beginning today. I'll be posting, as typical, our weekly tropical weather outlook this Saturday. And then now that we're getting into the Pacific season, we're now starting to slowly get into the hang of things. I might be starting to post a little bit more videos instead of just waiting every week to do them on Saturday, as we've been doing up till now, because it's the off season. But generally now, the off season is, I guess you could say, pretty much over now that the Pacific season has begun, and we've also begun our daily outlooks in the Atlantic. So we'll probably do more of these videos, maybe, although we'll see, given that there's not much happening right now. But if something does come up, we're definitely going to be doing videos whenever or as needed. And then come June 1st, we're officially going to wipe away all the off-season stuff and go to pretty much what the National Hurricane Center is now doing, daily tropical weather outlooks. It's that time of year, hard to believe, but it's coming, and I hope you are prepared. With that being said, um, really hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. If you did like today's video, I would appreciate it if you like, comment what your thoughts are, and subscribe. Definitely have a lot more videos coming, especially as we head into hurricane season. So if you want to stay tuned for those, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so whenever I upload a video, you can get it the moment I upload it. Once again, thanks for watching. Stay safe to you all. Peace, love, and kindness to you. And we will talk again very soon.